welcome. This is Lunchtime Yin, and today's a little bit of a chilly day, so I have an extra blanket in case I want to cover up. And I have a couple yoga blocks handy. I've got a blanket and some pillows, and those are probably going to be a good place, a good kind of starting point to set yourself up. Oh, it's possible you'll have a furry creature or two. I'm not sure that they contribute a lot to the yoga experience, but they're cute. So we're going to start in a reclining butterfly, and a reclining butterfly can be just lay on the ground, feet together, knees open like little butterfly wings. But you can also build in some structure and support that can help with all kinds of things. So since it's a lunchtime class and you may have been leaning over your computer a bunch, if you want to follow along with me, take a blanket that's big enough that when it's rolled up, about that big, that it's long enough to cover your spine. So this is just a kind of, it's a wool blanket, but it's one of those blankets that sort of fits the top of a queen size bed. A lot of like the Mexican striped blankets are about that same size. So that's a pretty good size of a blanket to have for the purposes of this, but any blanket you've got, you can make work, okay? So I'm gonna lay that down, and then I'm also gonna use a pillow under my legs. I've got a big long pillow. This is a bolster, yoga bolster, but you can use two pillows like this, one under each knee if you want some extra support. So lay yourself down on the blanket if you want to use it. And if you don't, just lie down on the floor, and then, adjust until it feels like it's the right spot. For me, kind of somewhere near the bottom of my rib cage and about the middle of this lowest part of my back. I don't like the blanket right up against my sacrum because the curve of the blanket and the curve of my sacrum don't always match. But somewhere just shy of that, and where all of my ribs are being supported by the blanket, that feels pretty good. And then I'm gonna take a bolster and put it under. And this extra blanket is so that I can make myself toasty warm. So the feet are going to go together with the knees open. And then if you're a little chilly, you can cover up all your body parts with a nice little extra blanket. Okay. Now if I want my head held up just a little bit, I can just do a tiny little wrinkle, and that'll support the head. If you fold the blanket a little bit more, then you'll have a higher angle for your head. So depending on how much support you want there, you can make those adjustments. And then for me, if I keep my arms in a little closer, this allows my shoulder to relax deep inside the joint, okay? So if I were standing up, my arms would be about there if I held them out, and that's about where I let them fall. If I take my arm out this way, it'll do a little bit more of a release around my chest. So depending on where you're feeling the tension, like are you just feeling it in your shoulders, or are you feeling it across, like is there a bigger restriction across your chest that you might want to add that? And so, we're gonna let ourselves settle in, and we're gonna stay a while with this pose, and then our other poses won't be quite so long. So it's a good opportunity here to sort of mentally disconnect from some of the little threads that are woven in there. And the thing for me is always, if I'm kind of been busy and I've been working on a project, it takes a while to disconnect those threads. So start by becoming aware of the body, and just make sure you like the way you're settled in, make little adjustments. And then once you're pretty satisfied there, just take deep, smooth breaths and try to pay attention to the active breathing. Following the breath kind of brings us to the present moment and lets us cut some of those little threads that we can pick those back up later. But for now, we want to sort of give our brain a chance to get refreshed and just focus on the present. And take a big breath. And with your exhale, just bring your knees together. And you can keep the blanket if you want, but we're going to take out any support under the legs, right? So that we can move the legs a little bit back and forth. So you can give yourself these little kind of windshield wipery moves. Ooh. Now, we're going to stretch out. So before we do that, we can take this blanket out from under our upper back. I like that little moment to rock on it. And you can notice whether you feel like a little bit more spread out around your upper back, or whether you feel, like a little release or a little softness around the shoulders. Just notice what happens, because if it's good, you can put that in your back pocket and do it all the time. So we're going to stretch from fingertips to toe tips, and then we're going to kind of turn the body into this banana shape. So I took my whole torso and just brought it to the left, right? Just side bend. Now my right side is all stretched out, and then I just slid my legs over to the left. Now I'm going to stay like this today, but one option also is to take, like in this case, the right leg and cross it over the left at the ankle, which puts just a little bit of a lift. So as your hip gets heavy towards the ground, there's a little more tug on this IT band region of the outer hip. So if that feels pleasant to you, you can stay with that. Now you can cup the arms one inside the other. You can just stretch them up over your head. I'm going to go for a little softer position and a little bit more like a cactus today. So I'm just softening everything down. It's a rainy day. We're not going to be here very long, but it's nice to let this settle. And just take a slightly softer approach. Sometimes I like to get a little spicier, and sometimes a little less spicy. And just take nice deep breaths. So stay here for about another minute. Okay, so we're going to take a nice big breath. And then we're going to come out of this shape, just coming back to neutral. Pause for a moment, give everything a little bit of movement. Oh. And then we're going to do the same thing, but on the other side. So I'm not ready yet, so I'm going to give myself about like 2 more breaths worth of this little like relaxing for my hips and my low back. I like to let my spine kind of shift all the fluid back where it belongs before I start stretching it again. Okay, I'm feeling pretty ready. It takes me about 30 seconds usually. Okay, so I'm going to take my upper body over the other way and bring my legs over. And again, you can cross at the ankle, that outer leg, and you can hold onto your wrist, or you can make this whole thing just a little bit softer so that it's not so intense around the shoulders, just the right amount of intensity. I'm really, like for me today, what I'm really interested in is kind of from my armpit to my knee, that sort of side of my body. I'm interested in that area getting the biggest focus. So if the focus is on my shoulder, I'm relaxing that out. because we did the first thing maybe for our shoulder and for our inner thigh, so now we're getting this outer thigh, outer hip area is really the focus. Now, clearly, every part of the body benefits, but it's nice to differentiate. So we're going to stay for a wee bit longer, about another minute and a half. But if there's any little like, oh, that doesn't feel so good, definitely change those things before you get much further. Sometimes it takes me a full minute to know that it's not exactly right. Inside of that last couple of breaths here, y'all. So take a nice big inhale. And as you exhale, come on back to the center and rinse that out. And then we're going to come up to a seated position. Now, if you want to do a little bit of other kinds of movement, like you would like to do some little cat-cow shapes, or you want to get a down dog into your life, you can do those things first. And when you're ready, just join me in the seated position. A little bit loath to take that blanket off. Actually, it's quite toasty. But in any case, I'm gonna do it for now, and then I'll throw it back in a moment. All right, so I've got a little bit of stuff around me. I've got I've got a throw pillow, I've got a blanket, and this guy I'm gonna throw over my shoulders a little bit, and I've got a block. Now I could use the pillow instead of the block if I wanted to. Here's what we're gonna try to create. We're going to try to create a situation where the legs lay on top of each other. Now, it could look like this, where your two knees lay on top of each other. For me, the issue is that it tilts me sideways, right? So I either have to elevate my hips to make it level, or for me, this is the better shape, which is to come out a little wider. So now I've got my shins stacked up on top of each other. Now, this bony part of my ankle and this tender part of my inner thigh do not love to be in contact with each other. It's a little intense. So this is where the block comes in. So I stick a block right in front, and I put my ankle on the block. And that is much more comfortable. Now, for some of you, it might be nicer to put the block way out in front and let the ankle go out, or let this go out at an angle, okay? Because then you can get your thighs in here so that it makes a little bit more of a square, and that's a little bit more approachable. The other option would be, you can go lower. The other option would be to simply take a kind of tight cross-legged sitting position so that the thighs are as close together as you can get them. That's the idea, because we're just coming back to this outer hip area. Okay, so then you're going to fold forward. Now, this space right here where the knee is, if the knee feels like it's dipping down and there's pressure on either the inside or the outside edge, this is where you could use some other props to help. So you could use a pillow or a blanket, just to create stability, right? So the thigh bone and the shin bone are supported, and so the knee isn't in trouble. And then if it's okay, you fold forward, and some people can fold so far forward that their elbows rest on the floor. For me, that's not gonna happen in this, not today, and most likely not in this lifetime. Never say never, but in any case. So I'm gonna cover myself up with this blanket just so my shoulders are warm and my arms are warm. And then I'm going to hang out here. And one of the things I love to do with this pose is give my feet a little bit of a stretch, my toes a little bit of a stretch, so I'll slip a finger in between every toe. And then for the second half of this, it gives my toes a little stretch out, and it feels like it releases pressure in the metatarsal area as well. You can buy these really cool yoga toe separators to put on your feet. They're about $30. Or you can do this for free. And just letting myself like feel out how far forward is the right amount of forward. You can let your head kind of hang or keep your head a little more in a neutral position. So we're gonna stay with this guy for about another minute and 45 seconds. About halfway through, just a little over. I'm going to modify this just a little bit for the last minute and kind of come back to the other theme that we started with, and that's a side bend. So the leg that's on the bottom is the side that I'm going to go away from. So I'm just going to lean over, and I can take my arm over. I like this because we're only going to stay for a minute, so it's okay for me to reach my arm up, but you don't even have to do the arm. You can just lean, and then let this hip stay heavy on the floor. And for me, that gives me just a little bit, again, just a little bit more sensation along the side waist and the side of the hip. And since it's just for my last minute, I'm kind of resting my head on my shoulder here. Deep breaths. All right, I'm going to take a big breath, kind of stretch into this, use this arm, bring myself all the way back, and then I'm going to lean back and undo the legs. And take a moment and shake all that out. Oh, that felt good. Now, notice how it feels when you leave the pose. If it's a little bit tender, then you may decide you want to use a few more props, especially if you've got any tenderness around your knees. And if you've got tenderness around your back, you might do a little bit less either in the forward bending or the side bending when we get to that. So we're going to do the other leg in this hip position. And so hopefully you remember which one you did. Just kind of noticing, like, do you need a little more support in different places? And then we'll hang out and stay with this pose for a bit. So our theme today, if that's the right word for it, is this kind of outer flank of the body. And so in Chinese medicine, that is the home of the gallbladder meridian, which is the organ that is, in terms of like the other, all the organs in Chinese medicine have like their physical component, the thing they do, right? Gallbladder produces bile. And then there's the thing that they do for us emotionally. And the gallbladder is the channel that is our contentment channel. When it's out of balance, we can feel irritated and grouchy and angry, grumpy. When it's in balance, we tend to feel a little more contented and a little more, it enhances our ability to be present for whatever is happening in our life, even if it's not a pleasant circumstance. It enhances our ability to be present and to be content with what is unfolding, right? And our process in that. So, I've been feeling like it's a good, it's a good one to be working on at this time in world history. So, you can decide how that feels to you. So we're halfway through here, so we've got just a couple more minutes. We're going to hang out with this. So we're kind of coming into that last minute. So I'm gonna give myself this little side stretch over this other way. And again, if this doesn't feel like the right answer for you, don't do this part. You can stay with the first part. We just got a few more breaths here. Ooh, take a big inhale. And then hold that in and come all the way up. Oh, and then as you exhale, lean back and unpretzel your legs. And then once you've gotten that accomplished, you can give yourself a little shimmy. Let our spine kind of come back to neutral. Now we're going to do one more pose. The gallbladder's companion in Chinese medicine is the liver, and the liver runs up the inner thigh. So the gallbladder comes up the outer hip and the whole side of the body, really, all the way up to the side of the head, everything. The liver's a little bit more contained to the leg, comes in, does some abdominal things. But for us, for our purposes, if we're going to access it, we're going to access it through the connective tissue that lives right here in the inner thigh. And we're not acupuncture, and we're not doing acupuncture, which is very precise. This is a little more diffused, but it can't hurt. So if it helps at all, it's good for me. All right, now I have put a blanket under my knees because I like that little bit of a bend. You could put pillows under your knees if you want a bigger bend. And then if you can do it, we're going to fold forward. Now, for some of us, just genetically, the way the bones are shaped, the hips go backwards, not forwards. And so you have a couple of options. You can lie down on your back, scoot over to the couch or to a wall, and put your legs up on the couch so that gravity does the work of this little shape. Or if you're not in a room that has access to either a wall or a couch, just sitting upright as best you can with the legs out like this is going to do the job, right? Because if your pelvis is trying to go backwards and you're trying to bring it upright, you're going to get that connective tissue shift. So it's going to work out just fine. And I usually like something to lean on. So I'm going to throw in some blocks along with my blanket fort. And we'll hang out here for about 3 more minutes. out of our last bit here. About another minute. Ooh. Yogis. So we're going to take a really big breath. We're going to let go with a big and then we're going to inhale our way up. Lean back, bend your knees. Give yourself a little rinse. Now, this is the end of our lunchtime yin practice together, but you, if you're not on a schedule, could do a little shavasana. If you don't have to go get your lunch on so that you can go back to work. Or if you'd like, this is a, kind of a nice, you could take a moment and do a little seated meditation. So thank you for joining me for the little yin yoga lunch break. And hopefully you'll have a great rest of your day. Namaste, yogis.